Hello, Mount Olive Church. It's going to try to do us a Monday morning devotion. The topic for this week was the power of forgiveness. The power of forgiveness. So we want to talk about that just for a moment this morning, and I want to go to Matthew 18 and 23. And what we're going to do here is do a little bit more reading than normal. So in Matthew 18 and 23, let's just get into the devotion. Matthew 18 and 23, it should be on your screen here. And it says, "Therefore is the kingdom of heaven likened unto a certain king." And so we're going to say God is the king here, which would take account of his servants. And his servants would be you and I. Let's just say me. Okay. You say you, I say me. All right. So it's talking about us as individuals, right? When he began to reckon or take account, one was brought to him which owed him 10,000 talents. Now, this, according to my Dake Bible, and there's different interpretations, if you take these talents as a golden talent, then that would have been $290,850 that he owed the king. This is supposed to be a picture of our sin. How great is the debt of our sin? And so that's what this is supposed to illustrate. And then look in verse 25. But for as much as he had not to pay, he couldn't pay it, just like we cannot pay the price of our sin. His Lord then commanded him to be sold, and his wife and his children, and all that he had, until payment could be made. And so that represents being slaves to sin, let's say. But thank God the payment was made for us through and by Jesus Christ, which enables the next verse. Therefore the servant fell down and worshiped him, saying, Lord, have patience or mercy with me, and I will pay thee all. Then the Lord of that servant was moved with compassion and just loosed him and forgave him of that debt. God has forgiven us of the great debt of sin because Jesus Christ paid the price of that debt on the cross. And because of God's mercy, grace, and love, praise God, he has forgiven us. And he will forgive you today if you've never come to him and asked him for forgiveness. And that liberates the soul. So the first thing in this devotion is we find a chord of worship in our heart as we realize the great debt on the cross that was paid so that you and I could be forgiven. So then we look in verse 28 and the story takes a little different turn. But this same servant, let's say the Christian now, the Christian, a believer, the church member, he went out and found another fellow servant, which owed him 100 pence. Okay, and he laid hands on him and took him by the throat, saying, pay me what you owe. Now, the breathtaking thing about this is his fellow servant, we'll say Christian or neighbor, owed him only $17. The debt that he owed was much greater that the king forgave than this little measly $17. But he took him by the throat. And I preached a message on this one time, this visual of him grabbing and choking, saying, give me what you owe. And I likened it to a Doritos commercial. I don't know if you remember that Doritos commercial, but there was a guy eating Doritos and a dog with a bark collar came up, anti-bark collar. And the guy eating Doritos told the dog, said, if you want a chip, you got to speak. Of course, that was mean because the dog would have to bark and get shocked. Well, the next frame of the picture shows the dog over the side behind the park bench, and the dog takes the collar off and quickly slips it onto the man's neck. And so when the man looked at him, the dog would just bark, and he gets shocked, and he falls down, and the dog starts eating the Doritos. The shock collar, being choked. You know, that's the way a lot of Christians are when they go into a supermarket and they run into that person that they have truly never forgiven. It's like that shock collar. As soon as they see them, or they run into them at the restaurant, or they run into someone on the street, or maybe it's your own self that you can't forgive. But you see, the point of the lesson is, even though that man had his fellow servant choked by the throat, in reality, his unwillingness to forgive, his unforgiveness, was really choking him. That's the way it is with unforgiveness. And what an ugly picture it is for us to not forgive others of their measly offenses to us when God freely, by the blood of Christ, has forgiven us of all our sin? I just want to share that with you this morning, and I want to encourage you to deal with unforgiveness in your heart. It will liberate you, it will set you free, and it is God's will for your life. How ugly is the picture of those who've been forgiven by much, but yet cannot forgive that of very little. I hope you have a blessed Monday. And remember, this week is about forgiveness. God bless you, Mount Olive.